Welcome to Books and Things with Tom. For the last 4 weeks, I've been presenting the heroin addiction programs, and this today is our fifth. We're trying to educate people, as many as we can, as to what heroin's out there and how many people we're losing daily. And I just hope you get a pen and paper and take notes. And if you see someone who needs help, please help them and stay alive. And you can contact any of the previous guests and today's guest. Today's guest is Jim Spellman. He's a retired educator and coach and is reporting out what he learned about the heroin trade in Afghanistan. Jim took it upon himself to go in a dangerous area and find out what the opiate trade out there is all about. And he's lucky to come back.
Tom, first of all, I want to thank you for honoring me by being on your show. And speaking on behalf of a lot of people in Southeast Connecticut, Southern Rhode Island, thank you for what you do. You bring before the public topics and matters that receive too little attention elsewhere. And I want to thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You're welcome. If I see something wrong, I like to correct it. And if this heroin thing is just too much, there's too many kids that are dying, and we've got to figure out a way to stop it. And I don't know how that is. Maybe you can enlighten us in that.
First of all, Frank, I'd begin with the genesis of how I got involved in combating the heroin epidemic. Yeah. About 4 years ago, within the space of 3 months, I attended 3 funerals of my former students, football players. And they were 3 very, very diverse individuals, 2 males, 1 female, socioeconomically from very, very different backgrounds. But the cause of death was the commonality. Each of them had died of an opioid overdose. And it was an extreme wake-up call. And then within the next few months, I attended 2 more funerals of former students, football players. So here I'm dealing within a 6-month period with 5 deaths of my former students, football players. And sitting down over at Dunkin' Donuts Coffee on a Friday morning with 4 individuals I usually meet with every other week, I raised what had occurred. And around the table, each of the other individuals stated that they themselves, within their immediate family or immediately circle of friends, had lost someone to heroin or knew someone who was going through addiction. And the light bulb went on that here we are surrounded by heroin, surrounded by opioid abuse, and very, very few people are even talking about it. With that, getting together with a number of like-minded individuals, we founded Shine a Light on Heroin, which was the first heroin awareness and education program in southeastern Connecticut, Southern Rhode Island. January of 2017, we held our first awareness rally down on the bridge in downtown Wesley. And because of the work of the people who were immediately associated with the Shine a Light on Heroin, the organization has gone on to do a tremendous job of educating and awareness. It spawned a sister organization under Tammy and Joe Dela Cruz, Lisa Cody Johns, Ken Edwards, Community Speaks Out. Shine a Light on Heroin focuses on awareness and education. Community Speaks Out focuses on family assistance and guidance towards active heroin addicts receiving treatment, recovering heroin addicts, transitioning back into the workplace. Now, with those expert individuals tending to those areas, I began to seek out an area that I could focus on. And the area that I arrived at was the source of heroin. Where is the heroin coming from? We're doing a better job in education, awareness, treatment, recovery, things of that nature. But until the source is eliminated, we're basically spinning our wheels because there's heroin addicts being created daily. After about 18 months of really digging into the situation, arrived at a fact: 90% of the heroin that is coming into the United States originates in the country of Afghanistan, specifically from the poppy fields that are located there. It is sold to the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels now are focusing on cocaine and fentanyl as far as their two big money makers. They can buy heroin from the Islamic terrorists cheaper than they can produce it themselves.
Wow.
The cartels are businessmen. They're interested in bottom line. They live in palatial condos, apartment houses, mansions. They're in it for the money. The true source of heroin in the world is not in it for the money. They're in it to seek the decimation of Western civilization, specifically the United States.
Really?
They're willing to sell heroin to the cartels to get it into the United States with only a profit margin that allows them to buy arms, munitions, and recruit other terrorists.
Wow.
That's my primary finding coming back from Afghanistan.
Wow. That's beyond anything that you read about.
Exactly, Tom. You have a wondrous way of summing things up. It is beyond anything that you read about because you don't read about it. You don't read about it. You don't see it on the media. It is something that has been kept in the background. The fallacy that exists out there today is still that the major supply of opioids is a diversion from the pharmaceutical companies. That certainly was a causal factor in many individuals becoming addicted.
Right.
But it is not the street heroin that's available in every town, city, and village in this region.
Wow. And you can buy it just about any place, apparently.
You can buy it any place, Tom. I do a lot of investigative work and making contacts with active addicts, even with dealers. The dealers, of course, when I find out about them, I immediately turn the names and locations over to the police. But you can buy heroin in any place in southeastern Connecticut, southern Rhode Island, from Bank Street in London to the parking lot of the Ocean House in Watch Hill. That's how pervasive it is.
And it's not limited to low income or high income, it's anybody.
Heroin knows no race, heroin knows no gender, heroin knows no socioeconomic class. Heroin only knows potential victims.
Yeah.
And they come in all shapes and sizes and from all locations.
Wow. I've had Shine On heroin.
You had Krista Quattramini from
Yes.
Shine a Light on Heroin.
Yeah.
Krista is the primary moving force in that organization, and none could be more expert and dedicated.
Well, it's funny because I met her through a book organization, and she mentioned this heroin thing, and I said, I would like to get a hold of Tammy and do Community Speaks, and that's about the time her son died. And so she hooked me up, and that's how I ended up getting them all. And then I had last week with Stonington Community
Drug Council,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You had Kristen, I believe.
Yes. Yes. Kristen and Leanne
Yep.
were on from the Human Resources over there. When I started doing this, I had no idea how many organizations there are out there to be able to work with.
There's a plethora of organizations, Tom, and quite frankly, as many as there aren't enough. Any organization is limited by the number of volunteers that it has available to help. Anyone out there in your viewing audience who has an interest can find an area that they will lend themselves very, very well to assisting. My particular area, Tom, the source is an area that if individuals wanted to become involved in it, They are best served by writing letters, emails, telephone calls to their senators and congressmen saying that they are in favor of the United States government moving with other nations to shut down the poppy fields in Afghanistan. Until that source is ended, everything that all of the organizations that we spoke of are doing will continue to be done because there will be a need for it continuously to be done. My greatest fear, Tom, and we were discussing it earlier as we were waiting for the studio to be prepared, is an acceptance on the part of the American public that we're always going to have an addicted class.
Yeah.
That's intolerable.
Yeah. And the other person I had on was Jack Malone from
SCAD, right?
And he was interesting too. It's just, I think, I don't think that people know what is really available.
No. If I could just to comment on Jack Malone.
Yeah.
Jack Malone has been combating addiction in one form or another longer than anyone else in this area.
Yeah.
And for a long time he was a John the Baptist. He was a voice crying in the wilderness. And Jack saw it coming, sounded the first warning cries, and it's so wondrous to me that there's people like him that are so dedicated that despite the adversity of not being heard, despite the adversity of not being listened to and acted upon, he still continues. He's an amazing person.
He is. And he sat there and said, I don't care how full we are, we'll find a space.
Exactly.
If you want to get in there, we'll find a space. And it's just, and like he said, sometimes they'll tell their relatives, oh, I called, but they didn't have any room. He says, that's not true. We always find room.
Oh, yeah.
And, but then you got to find the right people that want to get off and want to get better. And most of them, I don't think, really care.
Tom, there's an analogy I like to use, and if I could go through it briefly. Let's go back to the beginning of the heroin epidemic.
Yeah.
Let's say that we have at this end of the table 50 individuals who are using heroin, and the supply source is constantly coming into them. Okay, of those 50, and I'm using hard percentages, proven studies, SCAD being one of the sources of those studies. Of those 50, maybe 10, either by family intervention or self-revelation or having been arrested, are going to reach the stage where they're going into detox, rehabilitation, recovery. Okay, now those 10, some of them insurance money pays for, some of them. The greater majority of them, you and I and the other taxpayers out there pay for them. Okay, of those 10, optimistically, using the best recovery figures, the absolutely best recovery figures, only 5 of them make it to the point where they go past rehabilitation into full recovery. Even in full recovery, only one of them will use a 12-step program where they're completely abstinent. The other 4 will either be on methadone, Suboxone, or Vivitrol for the rest of their life. Once again, that's being paid for. It's being paid for sometimes by insurance, but most of the time by American public tax dollars. Okay, now let's look at what we've got so far. We've got 5 that have made it to recovery. They're costing us money. What happened to the other 5? The other 5 slipped back. Recidivism in heroin treatment is a primary problem. So they're back now. We have 45 that are still taking the street heroin, buying it, overdosing, committing crimes that are costing us money, creating a presence that requires tax dollars for police to take care of. Now, while all of this has been going on, that 45 has not remained stagnant. There's been additional addicts added to that pool. Now, this can go on and on and on, this back and forth, this slipping and sliding. We look at the end of the process, and we look at wondrous individuals who are in recovery, and it's fantastic. But we've got that never-ending supply, that pool of active addicts, and they're being facilitated by the source. Now, in our area, the majority of people at one time or another have worked in an assembly line operation. We know that what comes out is dependent upon what takes place in the middle and what takes place at the beginning. What we have is the devil incarnate's assembly line of a never-ending heroin problem until the source is eliminated. When the source of heroin is eliminated, eradicated, shut down, then we can begin to deal with the reservoir of existing addicts and work the process in between with wondrous organizations like SCAD, with wondrous organizations like Community Reaches Out, with the private facilities such as United Healthcare, Stonington Institute, the research occurring daily lends itself to better and better treatment of addicts. But my final point concerning that is, until the source is eliminated, it just continues and continues and continues.
And gets bigger.
And bigger. Right.
Now, you said Afghanistan sends all the opiates to Mexico. Is there other areas that we're getting it from?
It used to be that the primary sources of heroin in the United States were Colombia and Mexico. And then when the Islamic terrorists established so good a means of production in Afghanistan and really have perfected growing poppy seed, processing it. A side note, Tom, one of the things I learned when I was over in Afghanistan is that this coming spring's poppy crop is going to be the most prolific and strongest crop that is ever brought in. All of us are familiar with the term GMO, genetically modified organism. The poppy field growers, the Islamic terrorists, etc., are not ignorant of science. What they have had done is they have had the poppy plant GMO, genetically modified, to produce a plant that will probably give a third greater yield of the gum that produces the morphine from which heroin is eventually produced. So that what we're going to have out on the streets, Tom, beginning next autumn, is a greater potency heroin and more of it available.
And to top it off, you got GMOs in there too.
Exactly.
So even if you make it through the opium, you got the other crap.
Right.
Oh my God.
Double your poison.
Now somebody mentioned that one of the reasons we got the new mixture out there is that the heroin was getting stronger, and to cut it back, they're adding in fentanyl.
One of the facts about heroin addiction is that the first high that a heroin addict encounters, pumps into themselves, is never equaled. That is the greatest high that they will ever have.
So they keep
every
trying to get
dose,
there.
every dose that they administer thereafter is in pursuit of a duplication of that first high. Now, certainly the purer the heroin, the greater the high. What has taken place over the past couple of years is that heroin has been stomped on with the addition of fentanyl. Fentanyl being a even greater narcotic substance. Now, of course, the side result of that is that it is more deadly. It is much easier to overdose on pure grade heroin, and it is playing Russian roulette to use heroin that's been laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
The fentanyl part of it is what the Mexican cartels are now focusing on. They are buying from the country of China all the requisite precursor chemicals that go into the production of fentanyl.
So they're getting stronger heroin, cutting it, and getting twice as much to sell, and adding in the other stuff to it.
Exactly. You described it perfectly, Tom. It's anyone who thinks that we are winning the battle against the heroin epidemic is self-delusional.
No,
I would go so far as to state, and I'm sorry if I sound pessimistic, I'm simply dealing with the facts as I've seen them and have been presented to me.
Yeah.
We are not making a dent in heroin. We are fighting at best a draw.
Yeah. I remember hearing on TV maybe a year or two ago some of the drug officers saying, we're not gaining, we're losing, and we're just not doing it right. And I thought, you're right, because it's not getting any worse. I mean, not getting any better, it's getting worse.
The levels of frustration with the people who deal with the heroin epidemic daily, the pure stress and the frustration is heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Speaking to emergency room physicians, EMTs, police officers, one of our local heroes, Old Mystic Police Chief Kenny Richards.
Oh, yeah.
Kenny has time after time responded to heroin overdoses, and to hear him speak of dealing with a handsome or beautiful 17, 18-year-old male or female who's in the prime of life, who's on the doorstep of death, and having to put the tracheal tube down, having to administer the Narcan, and then crossing hands, crossing fingers, praying that they come out of it.
Yeah.
The toll that takes on the people that deal with the heroin crisis is huge, absolutely huge.
And PSTD.
And PTSD.
TSD. And because I had a fireman out here that had it, and it was mainly because of stuff that he'd seen. And and you do see an awful lot of stuff that you really shouldn't be seeing.
Tremendously. If I could go back to that group that I was talking about,
Yeah.
the first responders, the doctors, the EMTs, et cetera, the police officers, how frustrating must it be to be a police officer who works 8 months to nail a particular dealer, to have evidence that is absolutely uncontestable, and to see them brought into court, sentenced to 4 years, and released in 1 year.
Yeah.
I'm a firm advocate of help for addicts and long-term incarceration for dealers.
Yeah.
Just to keep the effort and the vitality of those fighting the battle alive.
Somewhere I read that the only export in Afghanistan was poppies.
You're entirely correct. You've done your research. There are no exports from Afghanistan other than heroin. It's an amazing country to drive around in, Tom, in that there are no factories, there are no electrical plants of any significance. It's a very, very primitive country. And I digress from the topic of heroin, but nonetheless I think it's associated with it. We've poured $61 billion into Afghanistan over the past 15 years.
Really?
$61 billion. And Tom, I rack my brain in recollection of what I saw over there. I saw no evidence of any infrastructure projects to improve the country. The country itself, Tom, is ranked second most corrupt in the world.
Wow.
Only the country of Somalia is ranked more corrupt. Every tax dollar that goes into Afghanistan, God only knows where it goes, because it does not go for the purposes intended. The social system itself runs off of a centuries-old practice known as bakrish. Basically, bakrish means that any service that is given, any service that is tendered, you pay a bribe beforehand in order to receive it.
Now, are they shipping opiates to other parts of the world?
Russia is as impacted by Afghanistani
Really?
heroin as we are. One of the places I visited when I was in Afghanistan was the Russian embassy in Kabul. In 2009, the Russian government made overtures to the United States government and said, let's go in bilaterally. Let's the two of us go in so that neither one of us is blamed.
Yeah.
Let's the two of us go in and eradicate the poppy fields. They did not receive a response from the United States government. They are what their first secretary of the embassy conveyed to me was that they will again make that overture this coming spring and summer. Not only to the United States, they will make it to England, they will make it to France, they will make it to the Scandinavian countries, they will make it to the Western countries that are being impacted by heroin. I'm praying and hoping that offer is taken up. It would be the ideal means of achieving the eradication of the fields.
So they don't need guns and ammunition. All they got is the opiate. They can wipe out the world.
What Afghanistan needs, first and foremost, is literacy. 85% of the country is illiterate. You cannot have a democracy when you've got that high in illiteracy rate. They need public health. They have the highest infant mortality rate in the world. 150 out of every 1,000 babies that are born in Afghanistan are dead within a year.
Oh my God.
The average life expectancy, Tom, of an Afghan male is 49 years of age. Yes. I spoke to about 12, 14 people while I was over there privately and collectively in 2 or 3 groups. One of the individuals that I spoke to, I met at a private residence, and he was assisted into the room by 2 men in their 20s. And he had the traditional Afghan tribal elder garb on. And I looked at him and I thought, I'm dealing with a gentleman maybe approaching 90 years of age, at least in his late 80s. Yeah. And he was very, very eloquent through an interpreter. Told me about how he had grown up working in the poppy fields himself, had gone on to own poppy fields himself.
Wow.
And learned a great deal from him. And at the conclusion of our time together, I complimented him. I said, hey, first of all, I want to thank you for having the courage to speak with me. He risked his life in doing that. The government would not approve. And I probably should not have done so, but I was curious as to how old he was. I said, sir, how old are you? And it absolutely flabbergasted me. He was 3 years younger than I am.
Oh my God.
It's a tough life.
Wow. We've got about a minute left here. It's been fantastic. Maybe you should come back and talk another half an hour. We could do another show. It's just fascinating and very important. For previously aired shows, tune into sec-tv.org. Click on the YouTube button and search the site for books and things, and you'll see this show will be on Monday, and all the rest of the programs are on there. You can watch any of the shows. I want to thank Jim Spellman for being here. It's really a pleasure.
It's been an honor.
Nice, and it's been an honor
and again, thank you for what you do for the area.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Check my Facebook page, Books and Things, excuse me, for updates. And thanks for watching. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. And spring is coming, but you still should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.
That went fast.